I would love to bring this now back to style and how you look at that and how you see that, because breathwork, connecting to self, right? That's what I do when I'm working with clients on style. It's all about connecting first to who they truly are and how does that version want to show up, not about what's on trend or any of that. So talk to me a little bit about style and kind of your POV on that. And if you think that it matters, if it's important, if you think that they're intertwined.
Yeah, when I hear the word style, a lot comes up for me. On the surface, I think of the clothes we wear, right? But then the deeper side of me is how we lead and how we move and how we interact. It's not the words we say. The words that we say, I think, make up about 7%, I want to say, of how someone interprets your message. I think tonality might be 30%, and I believe it's 55% of physiology, how you move.
Welcome to the Style Awakenings podcast. I'm Amanda Weil, the soul stylist and your host, and I'm joined today with Sam Kabert. And Sam is an entrepreneur turned certified breathwork practitioner and a keynote speaker. And he's also the author of the #1 bestseller book, Soul Life Balance, and also the host of the Soul Seekr Podcast. And Sam spent the early part of his career chasing success, and I get that. And he was also named to Silicon Valley's 40 under 40 list at just 31 years old. And in the past 5 years, he has courageously embraced a transformative path of self-discovery, really centering his focus on prioritizing mental health. And Sam is on a mission to offer tools to overcome overwhelm and encourage the rise of compassionate leadership to really eradicate the glorification of hustle culture. We have so much to talk about and unpack today, Sam. Welcome.
Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah. Is there anything in the introduction that I missed that you'd like to share about yourself?
All good. Yeah, it's we'll see where this takes us, right?
I know. People are probably like, breathwork and style, huh? And we're going to get there. We're going to totally get there. I want to start with your corporate days, because I've been there too. That's how I started my career, was in corporate America, that hustle culture. And you were in Silicon Valley. So were you in tech, or tell me a little bit about that? I always say my previous life. Tell me a little bit about your previous life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I started my first business in college. I was 23 years old. It's called Swagworks. We do branded merchandise, so promotional products. And then I moved back home to the Silicon Valley area, and it's definitely hard to get respect in Silicon Valley as a guy that puts logos on things. So I started to have these really high level elevator pitches, and I would do networking events, and people would be like, why don't you just say you put logos on things? And I was like, that cheapens what I do. It's a lot more than that. But then once I started to just simplify it, the business started to take off, and I started to get referred out to different companies in the area. And I got on the board of the Santa Clara Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. I think I was 24 or something, and started leading a young professionals group. I ended up starting a media network with several different podcasts, with monthly events, and an annual event at eBay's headquarters called Pitch Tank. It was our version of Shark Tank. So definitely networking and doing all the things with the who's who of Silicon Valley. And then I went a different path in 2019.
Okay, so tell me about that. What led you then to breathwork? Because it seems like such a jump to go from entrepreneur, building, hustling, to then breathwork.
Yeah, for sure. I think back then, when I made that jump to soul searching, soul seeking, and mindfulness, mental health back in 2019, several years before that in the personal development space, I started to hear a lot about meditation. And that's kind of where breathwork has been in the personal development space in the past several years. Now we're starting to see breathwork emerge a lot in high performers, call it personal development, whatever labels we'd want to use. For me back then, I was very much chasing success. And
Mhm.
anytime I achieved a new milestone or a new goal, it was like, okay, let me set a bigger goal. And it was all subconscious behavior. I didn't understand this till after doing the deeper work, being like, oh, I get it. On a
Mhm.
subconscious level, I was saying to myself, when I achieve ABC, I will feel XYZ. And then when I achieved that goal and I didn't feel any better than I did before, and I just had that temporary hit and
Mhm.
release of dopamine, well, at that point on a subconscious level, I was like, all right, off to the next goal, and just stuck
Mhm.
like a hamster on a wheel.
Yep.
So it was this crippling and numbing depression in early 2019 that led me to sit with the plant medicine ayahuasca. And before that, I did a breathwork journey with the facilitators. And that breathwork journey itself, no medicine, no drugs, anything like that at all, just myself in the breath for about an hour and a half and a facilitator. That alone was enough to really switch from depression to feeling joy, happiness, bliss, as the yogis would say, samadhi. And I understood for the first time, oh, this is what it means to feel light. So at that point, having done breath work and
Mhm.
ayahuasca, it was very much a spiritual awakening experience. So then I started to integrate that into my everyday life, which led me to doing a complete 180 in my lifestyle.
Yeah. And would you say now, just like looking back at that life, like there's that part of your life was amazing and it's exactly where you needed to be at that time and where you are today? I mean, are you happier now? Or do you feel more fulfilled? Like what's different for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Happier, more fulfilled, way more in alignment. All
Mhm.
of the things. There's new struggles for sure. They're different struggles. Um, Absolutely. It's not to say that everything is all unicorns and rainbows, right? Because it's not. And
Yeah.
enlightenment is not something that I am pursuing. And I remember a meditation teacher asking me in 2019, 2018, something like that, kind of like a coach, a guide. He was like, well, if you're not seeking enlightenment, what are you seeking? And I was like, wait, I'm supposed to be seeking enlightenment? Because I'm of the belief that there's not even that many actual enlightened beings walking this planet.
Mhm.
And I don't know that to be enlightened and living in like California, anywhere in California really feasible or something that I would want or realistic at all. So anyways, I remember answering to him. I was like, hey man, I just want to feel better day to day.
Yeah.
I want to feel clear. I want to feel fulfilled. I want to be at a place of peace. I want to just enjoy myself and enjoy my life. And he's like, wow, that's actually a really good answer. And yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
that's where I'm at for the most part now. And in my new book, Overcome the Overwhelm, I'm teaching people a framework called the breath process. The word
Okay.
breath is an acronym, and it's a way to allow ourselves to feel those heavier and denser emotions so that we can process them in real time so that they don't hold us back throughout our day and our life. So that's where I'm at now, doing my best to practice what I preach and live a life of soul life balance as opposed to work life balance.
So much of what you shared, I feel like I'm like talking to myself kind of with so much of what you shared. It's so wild, the journey that we've both had. It's very similar in so many ways. And I love what you touched on about like, yes, I feel like especially in America, it's that hustle culture of the go, 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 the do, do, do. When I was in sales, I was always told you're only as good as your last sale. And it doesn't
Mm,
matter if you'd had like the best quarter of your life, if all of a sudden you weren't having a great quarter, you were like dead to them. It's like, wait, what? And so I love everything you're speaking of like just being present and really grateful for the day that we have right here, versus always feeling like we have to strive. And it's great to have vision and it's great to have things that we're working towards, yet not allowing that to be what makes us feel worthy and valuable,
mm, yeah,
right?
that resonates.
So, okay, so you have your book, and tell me a little bit more. How else do you help your clients? And also, is there like a specific clientele that typically comes to you most? Is it like the people who are in corporate who are like, or who typically is in front of you to help?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm still like figuring that part out.
Mhm.
In terms of soul life balance, that's a reframe of work life balance where soul is like the archetypal energy of yin, which makes up our inner world, our mental, emotional state, our connection to something greater beyond this human experience. And life is reframing work as part of our life, and that's that yang energy, how we experience the world through our five senses, obligations, and responsibilities. So with that said, I kind of play on both sides of the fence, the soul and the life, the yin and the yang, the super deep psychonaut, spiritual seekers and people healing and just with plant and earth medicines, and then also the everyday professionals that are just looking for more mindfulness and maybe being like a little bit curious of this new wave of soul development that's a 2.0 of personal development. So I am very clear that both audiences are like executives, whether they're working for a company or in corporate or they're an entrepreneur on their own, but they're higher level positions, high performers for sure. But some of them are, working with plant and earth medicine, psychedelic therapy for the first time in their life and making massive changes in their life, just like I went through. And then others of them are just like, I just kind of want to feel better on a day-to-day basis, but I'm not really interested in psychedelics. So it's interesting for me, right? Because as I'm still 5 years into this career transition, really 2 years, and it's been more clear over the past 2 years, like that's the challenges I'm facing now more than anything else are career-wise. In a lot of ways, it's just starting from ground zero. It's starting from scratch because that $1 million swag company I had went poof with the pandemic, and I finally shut it down after it being on its last leg for the past 3 years. I just shut it down a few months ago. So right now I'm doing keynote speeches and different sorts of workshops for corporate, and then psychedelic integration coaching for those seekers. And I kind of bridge the gap with my online community called the Breath Club, in which I teach nervous system regulation, how to rewire, reprogram the subconscious mind, and ultimately practice soul life balance.
So good. It's so needed, Sam. And I love that you're bringing it into corporate because I feel like we're always going to have corporate America. We're always going to have that culture. It's not going anywhere. And it's so beautiful that we have the opportunity to bring the soulness into that so that maybe it can shift things a little bit so that other people don't necessarily have to experience maybe the corporate that I went through or the experience that you went through with the hustle. So I love that's getting like it's percolating in. And it's funny what you were sharing because I left corporate. Gosh, I think it's been 8 years since I left
Mm.
corporate. And just what you were saying, like everyone always thinks just because we're following our passion and we're doing the things that lights us up, that it's easy. And they don't realize that launching a business and doing your thing, even if it's something you're passionate about, it still is work and there's still so much to learn and there's still so much growth. And something that I want to talk about is you're really focused on compassionate leadership.
Mhm.
And I would love to hear a little bit more about what you mean by that and why it's important and why you're so focused on that.
Yeah, I think as leader, thank you, by the way. And I think we, as leaders, need to find ways to lead by example. And it's about embodiment and integration. So
Mhm.
if we're not doing our own inner work, whatever that looks like to you and whichever modalities, but if you're not prioritizing mental health and your own emotional, mental, and physical well being, then how can you ever expect to lead from a heart centered place?
Right.
And that's kind of goes back to what you were saying. Like, you're only as good as your last sale. Like, when I heard you say that, it was like, damn, ouch, that hurts, in so
Uh-huh.
many levels. Like, talk about like worthiness. And
Uh-huh.
there's so many layers to that of obviously worthiness. But yeah, where's the compassion in that? And we're always chasing, we're always hustling and something like that. So I think, you know, it's really just truthfully, to be candid and honest and open with your audience, It's disheartening to see how many corporations or even small businesses will talk about wellness and mental health and how they prioritize it, but then behind closed doors, they're not actually doing anything about it. And what, it's just it's disheartening to see that. And I just got off a Zoom chat with a client now who just resigned a few days ago, just because of something that went down with her CEO and the way he was treating her. And meanwhile, she's like, oh yeah, and they would totally like invest in your breath club at the same time, and that goes to show, okay, you might even put the dollars in there, but are you integrating it and embodying it from top down? And the answer typically is no.
Everything you just said, Sam. It's like almost like the greenwashing movement in with fast fashion and how they say that they're doing things that are better for the environment, yet they're really not. I find the same thing with so many companies and people and leaders who put that out there, like, oh yes, we care about our employees, we're doing this, that, and the other. And you're right, behind closed doors, the way they talk to you, the way they talk about you behind your back, it's completely inauthentic. And it's like they're doing it for the front, to like look a certain way. So yes, it's definitely a thing. It's like we had the big initial wellness movement, and now it's like, well, what's deeper than that? Let people truly be the same person behind closed doors who they are out in the open. And I feel like that's the next big wake up, I think, for people.
I hope so. And, it feels like with business news and just trends, it's always, that's exactly what it is. It's chasing trends. Because a few years ago, like we're actually seeing some momentum in wellness and mental health in the business landscape. And now it's like AI, and there's, why so many of us are just like caught in fear. It starts from the top down. And right now, we're not even talking about politics and government. We're just looking at business and corporations. But the reason why, like most of these executives and these businesses that most of them are coming from a place of wanting to do what's right for their team and their clients and the world at large. Most of them, for sure. They get blindsided though, because they are in fear that they need to have good ROI, good profits, and perform for their bosses. So it's just like this trickle down effect. And of course, there's ones that are totally out of integrity as well. But it's a massive issue, and at the end of the day, it comes down to seeing the humanness in each person. Before I got into the work I'm in now, I was known as the virtual assistant guy. And my first like career transition when I went through the spiritual awakening in 2019 was teaching entrepreneurs how to scale their business by building out virtual teams. And because I was known as the VA guy for whatever reason. And it was always shocking to me because I was like, guys, like working with virtual assistants and freelancers is not hard. It's a mindset shift. All you need to do is think of them as if they're employees. And most people, once they start being like, oh, wow, if I start realizing that there's a human behind the screen of this person that's doing the work, now I can have different expectations and work with them more effectively. Now, if we apply that same type of thinking towards leadership and corporate and business and just seeing the humanness in someone, where most of the time, even though a lot of companies are hybrid models or fully remote these days, you'll see them on Zoom, or you might know their spouse or their kids, something more. So that they're an actual human. It's not just an email that you're coordinating with, but for whatever reason, you're not really seeing them. And it's as simple as connecting with your breath, not even getting into the deep parts of breath work, just coming back to your breath and be like, wow, this is a human I'm interacting with. And we don't need to go so esoteric as like, oh, that's another version of me, right? Because a lot of people aren't there.
Yeah.
Right.
Mirror. It is.
But
Mirror,
anyways.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we won't go that deep, but that's what you and I do like to talk about. I can tell.
Yeah,
for sure. Well, it's interesting, everything you're talking about too, and like life being a mirror and the authenticity of how you show up. I would love to like bring this now back to style and how you look at that and how you see that, because breathwork, connecting to self, right? That's what I do when I'm working with clients on style. It's all about connecting first to who they truly are and how does that version want to show up, not about what's on trend or any of that. So talk to me a little bit about style and kind of your POV on that. And if you think that it matters, if it's important, if you think that they're intertwined.
Yeah, when I hear the word style, a lot comes up for me. Like on the surface, I think of like the clothes we wear, right? And but then the deeper side of me is like how we lead and how we move and how we interact. Like it's not the words we say. The words that we say, I think, make up about 7%. I want to say of how someone interprets your message. I think tonality might be like 30%, and I believe it's like 55% of physiology, like how you move, right? So for me, getting into becoming a keynote speaker and preparing for the TED Talk I did earlier this year, like I really started to study a lot of different styles of keynote speakers, being like, oh, it's interesting how this person will like move over there, pause, make a point, or this person is going to lean in and inflections, all these different sorts of things. Like for me, I think of style that way. In terms of like the clothes we wear, it's a mild point of contention for me, but like I wear a black shirt and a white yin yang logo for a reason, because I'm teaching soul life balance, and in it I'm teaching the archetypal energies of the yin and the yang, or yang. So I'm keeping it simple. It's kind of got like this it's a logo, a design that one of my VAs made, and it's kind of like drippy, looks just moderately psychedelic, not like super psychedelic, but it's not a clean yin yang. So like for me, it's like brand continuity. It's like, when I'm speaking on stage to corporate, it's not a suit. It's not the most button up or clean version. And also at the same time, like, it's not totally out there, but it's like a little bit edgy,
right.
So like it took me a while to kind of like be like, what's my style as a speaker? Not only like my physiology and the way I speak, but also the way I'm presenting myself through what I choose to wear on stage.
I love everything you just shared, because number one, it's like it's our overarching energy that we're giving off, and your style is a part of that, like how it makes you feel and then how people perceive you. And I always say that, like, oh gosh, it's like I think it's like 97% of what we learn is visual, something like that. So I love what you were saying, that like that small percent is voice. The rest of it is truly our energy and how we show up. And also like being intentional with how you show up. Like you were saying, your shirt, the t-shirt that you wear, it took you a little while to land on that, yet you're very intentional about wearing it because you have a reason behind it. So you've taken the time to decide how you want to present yourself and show up in the world. And that's what I always say to people. You don't have to be in a suit. You don't have to be in a fancy dress. You don't have to be in a ball gown. You just have to be intentional about why you're putting something on. And then that is what makes you magnetic. Like that's what that inner and outer authenticity, where people are going to listen to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And another note are my shoes. My shoes are definitely a point of contention with those close to me right now, and they're telling me I need to switch my shoes. But I got these really cool Vans a while ago, like high top Vans that have like a big what do you call it, like a lightning bolt on the side. They look sweet, but they are so uncomfortable, so I never wear these. And I went to Bali last year, and I happened to see an ad for, have you heard of Cane footwear?
No, I have not.
Yeah, they look like Crocs, but a little bit cooler. Yeah, I do not own a pair of Crocs. I have nothing against Crocs, but I just don't have any Crocs. But I saw them, and I saw this ad, and it was all about like how it's acupressure for your feet, and it's really good after working out, whatever. I think my whole travel from California to Bali was about like 36 hours or something. My body felt great, and because I wore those shoes, those Cane footwear shoes, and I loved them. So now anytime I go on a plane, anytime. I'm wearing those cane footwear shoes and all look ridiculous. I recently went to Costa Rica and I was wearing like, knee above the knee compression socks with shorts and my cane, Crocs type look. And my friends will make fun of me. I'm like, hey, I don't care. I'm rocking it. But I wear those same shoes on stage, and I wear them for a reason, because they are so comfortable. They don't necessarily look the best, but at the same time, like, they're black with like the holes that Crocs have, and they have like speckles of like purple and white and like some cool fun colors. So I'm like, it's kind of on brand. It works for now, and I know it would look better with those other Vans with the lightning bolt.
Shoot.
But I don't want to fall off stage.
Maybe we just need to break the Vans in a little bit, like put on a thick sock, get them wet, walk around.
Probably. Yeah.
I get it though. But at the end of the day, like, you're doing you, and it makes you feel good, and it makes you feel comfortable. So that's what
it's peacocking, like the image behind you, right? It's memorable.
Yeah, exactly. You do you. I always say that. You do what lights you up. That's your true style. That's what works. What would you say, Sam, over the past, 5 years since you've been diving into this, personal transformative journey, and as you've been really exploring breathwork and doing your keynote speaking and, figuring out what this new business venture looks like for you, what would you say have been your biggest lessons and learnings so far?
Well, I love that you brought up mirror work, and just like, that one is something I continuously come back to. I haven't been on my game in reading a morning prayer that I wrote a while ago, but for a while I'd wake up every morning and read this long. It would take like 10 minutes to read it. It's more that it's more of like a life vision, but part of it goes like, in every interaction, I'm seeing a reflection of myself and seeing where that is in me. I had this download on the beach in Malibu last year. I spent a lot of time down there, and it basically was like, are you familiar with internal family systems?
Yes.
So IFS work or parts work, I love it. It's so awesome. For anyone listening that's read the book Untethered Soul, it's kind of similar to how Michael Singer talks about how we have the roommate in the head, and we have that voice in the head. And if you're hearing this for the first time, you're like, oh, wait, like, no, everyone has that, right? Like, I think we all had that moment when we were reading Untethered Soul. It'd be like, oh, I'm not alone. And those t-shirts they used to have like in Hot Topic and Spencer's, that was like, I hear voices in my head, like, oh, that's all of us, right? Maybe not necessarily hearing voices, all of us, but like having these thought forms, I like to think of them. Well, Michael Singer, he does an incredible job in the book Untethered Soul, talking about that thought form, that roommate in the head. The psychotherapy practice of IFS or parts work is like, hey, you don't just have that one roommate in the head, you have a whole host of them. And these are different parts of yourself. So when we start to build relationships with these parts, we can even go as so far to give them a name. So we start to realize when those parts that might be limiting us because they're trying to protect us are coming up, or whatever the case may be. And then we just slow down. We recognize those parts, and we might do a short little visualization, like it takes a minute or something, just to be like, oh, okay, that's not actually me. Let me hear that thought form. And then it starts to drift away.
Right.
Well, this download I had in the beaches of Malibu last year around this time of year was that I was having some really challenging relationship challenges. And I'm not talking with a partner. I'm just saying like relationships, like friendships, or just different relationships, and just being like, wow, the energy between myself and this other person is clean. It's clear, but I keep seeing reoccurring patterns between these different people and the quote unquote problems that they're having, and they're similar. Why are all these people coming to me with similar problems? And in that moment, I had this download of external family systems, which is essentially the physical manifestation of internal parts. So if we start to recognize patterns, or if we're holding space, or this goes back to compassionate leadership, right? And connecting with someone, and we start to hear what they're struggling with, and maybe it's something that keeps coming from that same person over and over. We start to recognize a pattern from this person and that person and how they're all kind of similar. Then we turn it inward.
Yep.
And we say, where is that in me? Because that's a physical manifestation part in me. And I was like, whoa. And so I started to play with it, and I started to be like, all right, let me address what's coming up for them and do that work in me. And just by me working on that energy in myself, it changed them. And that's the part that truly blew my mind.
That is my favorite. I love that you just shared that, because that's been my favorite thing on this journey too, of realizing that if I'm triggered by someone or something, it's not them, it's me. And also understanding if like someone else is triggered by something I do, it's them, it's not me, right? It's like their interpretation of it. And I think that's been such a beautiful thing, and realizing that when we're able to shift it within us, or even just make peace with it or accept it, not make it wrong, it does dissipate the energy. And then that other person shifts too. I've done a lot of different leadership trainings over the years, and then I've like staffed leadership trainings too. And you really realize behind the scenes that with all your students, that what they're showing you is you, right? And then once you make the tweaks, it's like all of a sudden your students are good. It's such a cool experience. I just wish more people would understand that, because I truly think it would release so much of the conflict that we see when people would realize they're actually, it's a mirror for exactly who they are. And so we're the same. We're all like, we're one and the same. And it's a great opportunity to grow and learn. And I really wish that more people would take that on. So I love that you're doing this work to share it out. There gets to be more of us in the world that are doing this, and just really like shifting the energy of the planet. So I love that you brought that up. And then also with mirror work too, I think another thing that I love is like using a physical mirror and literally standing in front of a physical mirror and praising yourself for the things that you wish someone else was telling you. Like that's been a big shift for me too. Instead of seeking the external validation from someone saying like, you're doing a great job, this is amazing, you're just literally telling yourself that. And then what's really cool, I don't know if this ever happened to you, then all of a sudden people in the external start telling me that stuff. So it's like, it's really trippy when you start to play.
It totally is. And yeah, that's it right there when you start to play. And I love that you said start to play, because that's the way I think of it. It's like playing with the Matrix, right? And just playing with it all. And, I'm actually just coming out of about a week and a half, pretty tough depression. And usually these days I'm able to get out of it within a few days. And with that, I saw when I was doing my studying with the keynote speakers, I saw this guy, Walter Bond, speak, and he's a former NBA player, and he doesn't talk about spirituality or mindfulness at all. But what he does indirectly, because in this segment and in one of his speeches, he talks about having your pity party and giving yourself 3 days to like fully be in it. And I love that so much, because that's like those subtle little winks of mindfulness that we see from personal development people that I love. Point being though, like what really helps me to get out of, let's just call it a funk, as opposed to like a dark night or depression, is adopting a game time mentality. And what that looks like is like, okay, so if I'm learning about doing the work, I'm talking about living the work, I live and breathe doing the work, then when stuff starts to get really hard and challenging, instead of regressing to that victim mentality, let me adopt a game time mentality. Be like, this is why I've been learning it, now's the big game, now's an opportunity to apply this. So that's the game time mentality, and that goes hand in hand with what you're talking about, with like kind of playing with the Matrix. And that's a great like little daily habit I love doing.
Thank you for sharing that you were just having like an off week, because I think that's something so important for people to hear, that on this journey, you're not always going to be, like you said, sparkles and rainbows and unicorns. Like it's okay to have a down day, to have down moments. Like we're human, we have emotions. And I think so much, especially in that hustle culture, you're taught to just suppress it. Nope, keep going, don't feel it, keep going, keep moving. Whereas the reality is like it's okay to feel those emotions. If you need to sit and cry, like the other day, I just needed to sit and cry and just let it out. And it's okay, and not making yourself wrong for that. I think like so much of what we've been taught is like you're wrong if you feel bad, you're wrong if you're sad, you're wrong, 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 wrong. Instead of just being like, hey, I'm having a bad day. I'm going to give myself a timeout for 5 hours. I'm going to give myself the rest of this evening to just feel like crap because I want to. And then tomorrow morning, I'm going to shift. And it just like starts to really loosen, like you said, it allows you to play and just loosen up the energy and like not focus so much energy on it. And I think that's what really helps it dissipate too. So
For sure. And the crying piece is still such a challenge for me. Like I would say there was probably 4 or 5 days there that those tears were just coming. But usually like I'm like a one tear, slow tear type of guy, and I still am having trouble like fully releasing. And have you ever seen the movie What Dreams May Come?
no.
Yeah. So it's I believe it's a beautiful movie. Some people might say it's a dark movie. I'm 36. The movie came out, I believe, in 1998. So I saw it as soon as it came to like, TVs, whatever that was, on demand or whatever. So I was like 10 years old. And that was always been one of my favorite movies. And a couple of weeks ago, I had a medicine ceremony, Bufo, the toad medicine. And this is going really deep, but one of the main messages that came through, and I didn't think I would share this publicly, and I'm totally cool to, but was that seeing that movie at a young age is what kept me from killing myself at any point in my life, because that movie, basically, it's no spoiler, this is the premise, but it's starring Robin Williams. And he and his wife, their two kids get in a car accident and die. And then a few years later, Robin Williams dies. And then the wife can't take it and she ends up killing herself. So Robin Williams goes to heaven. And when the wife dies, she's not in heaven. So she went to hell because suicides go to hell. Now, this is not my belief. This is what's in the movie. But I saw this at a young age. So it was a really profound medicine ceremony and be like, oh my God, with like all the different times in my life where I wouldn't call it so much like suicidal ideation. Like, it's kind of it's a gray line, what is and what isn't suicidal ideation, how far you're going to take it. But I had it so ingrained in my psyche that if I were to kill myself, I would go to hell. So seeing that movie at a young age in a lot of ways saved my life. So a lot of the tears that I was experiencing was coming from like processing that and everything else that led up to that and the integration. So my friend actually serves this medicine full time, and I work with her a lot. But anyways, she goes, it might be a good idea for you to rewatch that movie. I'm like, yeah, it might be. And it's been a while since I've seen that one. So for several days and coming back and just like not feeling just feeling a crippling depression straight up. It took me a while to muster up the courage to watch that movie. I remember buying it on Vudu or Fandango at home now. Shout out to them. Not sponsored, but maybe. Just kidding. But anyways, I got it on Vudu, Fandango at home. And then I was like, yeah, no, I'm not watching it. Then the next night I started it. I think I got about like 30 minutes in and it kept cutting in and out. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm not supposed to watch it right now. And then the next night I finished it. And I remember there being a few scenes where I had like tears coming and I could feel it in my body of me blocking it. And I was just like, you're literally at home right now. No one is here. You're watching this to move energy, let it out. And it just took so much to actually let it out, but it felt so good. And just in sharing this with you, I'd say, I think that was the turning point as well in watching that movie. So,
wow. Wow. That's like a beautiful story on so many levels. And it's like what you were saying, just letting it out, letting the energy out allowed you to shift and move forward. And that's like the power. It's so funny. I always tell people when I'm in their closet and we're detoxing. I'm like, you got to move the energy of the clothes out to let in what's coming for you. And it's like, we see that in all areas of life. You've got to let something go in order to step into what you truly want, whether it's physical, whether it's emotional, mental, all the things. So powerful. Sam, this has been an amazing conversation. And I'm curious if there's anything else on your heart that you want to share with everyone before we talk about like how to find you and all of that.
Let me see. Trying to see, I don't want to draw it like one of the cliche things I've said in the past, but this is the one that keeps coming through. It's like, say this one, say this one. When I used to teach yoga, I don't teach yoga anymore, but I would have the class do hip circles, kind of like those figure eights when you're in table 4. And I would call them, infinities as opposed to figure eights, because we're basically drawing out a figure 8 in our with our body. And if we take the 8 and we flip it on its side, we get the infinity. And I like to look at the infinity as like a perfect representation of the human experience, because it has its highs and its lows. And that's just like what we experience in the human experience. But what's most important is it always comes back to meet itself exactly where it's at. So when we can zoom out in these heavier situations and remind ourselves like, hey, we chose to come here for all the highs and the lows, and just reminding ourselves that, and it's connected, right? It's not disconnected. We're always coming back to meet ourselves exactly where we're at. And every time we experience a new low, we typically, when we get out of it, have a new high. That next low isn't as low. It's a different depth of low, and we keep walking up the staircase. So for me, that's another like visual that really helps me in the harder times.
I love that. That's such a good one. And I have a mentor that always says, try to zoom out on your life and look at it from an objective perspective, as if it's not you, you're just looking at it. And that's kind of what sounds like what you were just sharing. And like also remembering that just like everything in nature ebbs and flows, the waves, the leaves, everything. And we are nature. So like we are one with that. So of course we're going to have our ebbs and our flows and our highs and our lows, and life continues and we keep going and we choose to keep going. Yes. So, okay, what's the best way for people to find you? I know you've got the book, you've got a podcast, like tell me where everyone should go to find you and learn more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. My website is samkabert.com, K-A-B as in boy, E-R-T, samkabert.com. And yeah, if you're into podcasts, I have a Monday podcast I don't do all the time, but there's a lot on there that have free breathwork exercises on the Monday episodes. And that's called Soul Seekr. You can find it on the website. Do a lot of blogging and books. Instagram and LinkedIn is typically where I'm at on social media. And yeah, samkabert.com. You can find all the things.
That's amazing. And everyone listening or watching, it's all in the show notes. So you can just scroll down and check that out. So Sam, thank you so much for joining us today. And I love that we could bring breathwork and style together and just have this really beautiful conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Amanda. Love this.
Thank you so much for joining us today, and I really hope you found value in this discussion. My guest and I have loved sharing and opening your eyes to the deeper impact style and clothing has on your life. And if you enjoy today's episode of Style Awakenings, please be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with friends who you know will also love and benefit from this podcast. The more we all learn to love ourselves and show up as our true selves, the lighter the world will become. Now go forth stylishly.